2022 is coming to a close, and it's been an amazing year for movies. But before I can talk about the 10 best movies that I saw this year, I have to talk about 10 movies that I had the displeasure of seeing this year. But before we get to that top 10 list, here's some dishonorable mentions. And it's gonna include a couple shows that I had a horrible time watching. Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Blockbuster, The Samaritan, Fantastic Beasts, and The Secrets of Dumbledore, Death on the Nile. I hated all of those movies, but none of them are as bad as these 10. Number 10. Making everybody's list this year is Thor Love and Thunder, which was a huge surprise to me considering that Thor Ragnarok is still my favorite Marvel movie ever made. Unfortunately, Taika Waititi must be going off the self-indulgence deep end here. The whole movie's a big joke. He makes the same joke 20 times, resorting to childlike humor, and he just forgets to make a good movie like he did last time. After Ragnarok, I didn't think I'd be saying this, but here's to hoping that Thor shifts to a more serious tone in the future. Number 9. Netflix generally makes some of the worst movies I've ever had the displeasure of seeing, and this was one of them. The Adam Project is like cheap booze. It gets the job done, but it does so with no finesse. One of the reasons I even saw this movie was because so many people were talking about it, and I am a huge sci-fi fan. Needless to say, I lost some faith in humanity after finishing this movie when I realized this is the kind of content people are getting used to. And that's all the Adam Project really is. Content. Number 8. After initially seeing Halloween Ends in theaters and feeling like it was an okay movie, the more I've had time to process it, I've grown to hate this movie. Michael Myers is basically nerfed to oblivion while this new emo character Corey decides to take his place. What started out as a promising new Halloween trilogy ended on this note, and it makes for one of the worst flops of the year. Number 7. After multiple bouts with bad press and what may or may not have been a couple of marketing stunts, Don't Worry Darling ended up being a huge disappointment. With a half-baked script and a twist that was less than satisfying, the sound design and the performances were not enough to save this movie from being one of the worst of the year. Number 6! Resembling a movie I would have gone to in the early 2000s as a kid, Uncharted came out in the wrong decade. I don't know what it is with these Sony movies, but Uncharted was literally one of the most boring action-adventure movies I've watched in a long time. Despite some good casting choices and the promise of exciting action sequences, Uncharted ended up feeling like the usual soulless and predictable video game adaptations that we're all too used to at this point. Number 5! Being a massive fan of Jurassic Park and hearing that they're bringing back the original cast, Jurassic World Dominion was literally one of my most anticipated movies of this year. What I didn't anticipate though was a brain-dead plot about some locusts and their effect on crops that consumed our returning cast throughout the entire runtime, terrible dialogue, and a predictable script. Sometimes it blows my mind to imagine that people actually sat in a room, read this screenplay, and thought, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what the people want. This is going to make a ton of money. Let's greenlight this. Let's go. And you can feel that mentality ingrained in this movie. It felt so corporate, it made me want to gag, and it made Jurassic World Dominion, unfortunately, one of the most disappointing movies of this year. Number 4! No other movie in this list bored me to tears the way that Morbius did. It felt like this movie should have come out 10 years ago, and even then, the most entertaining thing about this movie would have still been the memes. From dated effects to a predictable and melodramatic script, Morbius failed to deliver on all fronts in a time when superhero movies have already evolved beyond this point. The only part I did like was when Dr. Michael Morbius said it's Morbin time, and even that golden piece of dialogue wasn't enough to save this movie. Number 3! Following the theme of Netflix putting out some of the worst content possible, Blonde ended up being one of the most uncomfortable and unnecessary movies of the year. Having researched Marilyn Monroe's life a little bit after watching Blonde, I realized that most of the things that happen in this movie are either rumors or straight up false. It feels like this film did Marilyn Monroe a huge disservice while simultaneously putting the viewer through hell, and not in a good way. All I can say is I can't believe I got through that runtime and actually finished it. Number 2! Moonfall. A big Lexus and Kaspersky ad, 2 words, cringy and boring. Longest movie of my life. If you told me this movie was 4 hours long, I probably would have believed you. Terrible performances and dialogue stacked on top of a ridiculous and horribly executed premise gave birth to one of the worst movies this year. Moonfall does pretty much everything wrong. It's filled with side plots and characters that we don't care about, cringeworthy dialogue, exposition scenes that explain the plot to us in a way that's just about as checked out as we are as an audience, and CG done in a way that pretty much sums up everything wrong with movies right now. I had a horrible time watching Moonfall, and it's making my heart rate go up as I'm talking about it, so I better stop. Number 1! Black Adam may not technically be the worst movie in this list, but for me, it was the biggest disappointment of the year. I hated Black Adam, and the box office speaks for itself. I had a terrible time watching this train wreck of a movie, and I can't even turn my brain off and just enjoy it for what it is like I can with some other DC movies like Aquaman, for example. The Rock did a fine job as Black Adam, but the story, characters, action, and the way it was edited were so jarringly horrible, I think I still have yet to recover. Now with James Gunn taking the helm at DC, hopefully he can ensure that we're never graced with anything so uninspired and horrible and disgusting again. Well guys, there's my 10 worst movies of the year. Now that my heart rate and blood pressure's lowering a little bit, let me know, what do you guys think? Do you agree with my picks? Do you not agree with them? Let me know in the comments. Look forward to my 10 best movies of the year coming out soon, which I'm going to have a lot more fun making probably. Thank you guys as always for watching and all the growth and support in this first year on YouTube. Actually my first, I guess, 4 months maybe. Anyway, see you next time.